What if growing up doesn't mean becoming like the person you admire, but having the courage to realise you never want to become them at all? This is Dave's Movie Diary, where I revisit the films I've watched throughout my life and look at them through the perspective of who I am now. Not just whether they still work, but what they reveal about the characters, the stories, and the person watching them years later. Today I'm revisiting At Close Range, the 1986 crime drama directed by James Foley and starring Sean Penn, Christopher Penn, and Christopher Walken. Why this film? Well, I first saw this film when I was a lot younger. I reckon when I was late teens or around 19 to 20. I was immediately captivated by it. I can recall that. It had everything that grabbed me at that age. It had crime, danger, violence, great characters. Sean Penn, Christopher Walken. I've always loved those guys. And I've seen it, I don't know, I reckon 8 or 9, 10 times maybe over the years, in the last, 30 years roughly. But coming back to it now, I think the thing that stands out most is that this really isn't just a crime film. It's more a coming-of-age story. It's really about a young man trying to work out who he is. He's looking for direction. And he's being influenced by the wrong person at exactly the wrong time, and that can do a lot of damage. I think the film really asks a question that applies far beyond this story, which is how much of who we become is shaped by the people we admire when we're young. So 1986, when this film came out, I wasn't aware of the film at all. To be honest, I wasn't aware of Sean Penn at all. I can recall when Colours came out in '88. I then became aware of Sean Penn, but he still wasn't anything out of the ordinary for me at that age. But anyway, 1986, when this came out, was an interesting time. I was 13 at that point. And I think this film really captures a world that feels a century ago now. It's obviously a world before the internet and social media and that constant connection. But beyond the obvious tech differences, now, every possible risk is analysed to minimise the harm to anyone. Whether you want to talk about smoking or alcohol or wearing helmets or seatbelts, anything. It wasn't like that in 1986. Teenagers existed differently. You found your own entertainment. You hung around with your friends all day and half the night until you got summoned home. You pushed boundaries. You made mistakes. You learned from them. Law of the jungle definitely applied. There was a definite sense of unpredictability. You had to be on your guard, basically. And this film captures that period where you're just old enough to want freedom, but you're still young enough not to understand the consequences of every decision that you're making. All right, what's this one about? Brad Jr., that is Sean Penn, is a teenager living in rural Pennsylvania, and he's grown up mostly without his father. Obviously, Brad Sr., that's Christopher Walken's character. Brad Sr. suddenly returns to his life out of the blue, and immediately he makes an impression on Brad Jr. He's everything that the young Brad wants him to be, he thinks. Brad Sr. He's confident, he's charismatic, he's respected / feared. He's definitely dangerous. So Brad Sr. represents a completely different world. He exists in a world of constantly changing fast cars, lots of cash, shady characters and criminals, lots of excitement, lots of women, and lots of freedom. To Brad Jr., this isn't just a case of his father returning to his life, but it's an opportunity, and it's a chance to escape a life that's going nowhere. He is living with his mum and his younger brother, that's Chris Penn. His grandmother also lives with them. They get along fine. However, his mother lives with a guy who, to be honest, it's understandable why he doesn't get along with Brad Jr. and Tommy. That's the Chris Penn character, because Brad Jr. and Tommy are layabouts. They don't do anything except smoke dope, drink his beers, cause him problems all the time, and it's a tricky situation for everyone. And the stepfather, well, they're not married, but anyway, the would-be stepfather challenges Brad Jr. and says, "Why don't you get a job?" And Brad Jr. says, "Yeah, I tried that. It's not for me, blah blah blah." So look, nothing's happening out on the farm where they live. And then Brad Senior in the guise of Christopher Walken comes back in, and it's a chance to become someone. Brad Senior knows exactly how to appeal to his son. Really smart. He treats him like an adult. He makes him feel important. He gives him a place in his world. But slowly, as the film goes on, the fantasy starts to disappear, and the exciting lifestyle is really revealed as something much darker. And we, as the viewer, know that Brad Senior is not a role model. He's a master manipulator. He manipulates everyone around him, including his own son. And to be clear, Tommy, Chris Penn's character, is not Brad Senior's son. He is Brad Jr.'s half-brother. So at the same time, Brad Jr.'s relationship with Terry shows another possible future. Terry is played by Mary Stuart Masterton. She's like 16. Brad Jr. is, 18, something like that. 18, 19. And Brad Jr. sees maybe a normal life in store, a loving relationship with someone, a chance to become his own person. And the film becomes about Brad Jr. choosing between the person he thinks he wants to become and the person he actually is. And then we get towards the end of the film. James Foley directed this film. Not a name that's meant anything to me. I looked into him though, and I can see that some of his films are about people trapped by their circumstances and wanting to change. A lot of them are outsiders, or they're in pressure situations, damaged relationships. They're looking for something better. And I realised that he directed a film called Reckless in 1984 with Aidan Quinn. Only saw it the once, but I remember being pretty captivated by it. I would have seen it when I was 12, 13. It's a real coming-of-age story about young people searching for identity, trying to escape the limitations, taking some risks. I haven't seen it since. Maybe it hasn't aged well, but I remember it being pretty good back in the day. Then he made At Close Range, which I'll talk about more. He then made Who's That Girl, interestingly enough, with Madonna the year after this. And of course, Madonna and Sean Penn were married at the time. That relationship can probably deserve a movie on its own. That movie didn't work. I recall sitting through it once, and yeah, it's pretty bad. Then he made an interesting film in 1990 called After Dark, My Sweet. That's a pretty good film. It's a bit darker. It's a character-driven crime film that snuck under the radar. But I remember that being pretty good. Then he made Glengarry Glen Ross in 1992, and that's a pretty incredible actor-driven drama about guys trying to sell real estate with real-time pressure, with Pacino and Jack Lemmon and Alec Baldwin in a cameo. Another interesting thing about James Foley, though, is that he directed an episode of Twin Peaks. And I thought, oh, that's pretty weird. Then I looked into that more, and that was not unusual. Lots of lesser-known directors directed 1, 2, 3 episodes of the first couple of seasons that came out in I think it was 90 and 91, something like that. So that was interesting. It was nearly like David Lynch opening the gates to some young filmmakers that he thought were interesting, and James Foley was one of them. There is a little bit of a connection, I guess, between At Close Range and Twin Peaks, because they're both looking at ordinary-looking communities with a lot of hidden darkness and secrets and damaged people. But beyond that, of course, like Twin Peaks is really a world of its own. The setting for this film is very authentic to me. That rural location, the small town atmosphere. I like the way Foley sets it up with teenagers hanging around it looked like a war memorial or something in the center of town. And that feels real. That's what teenagers did back before the internet or gaming or, there wasn't much to do back then. Even if you lived in the cities, there wasn't a whole lot to do, except watch TV or get into trouble. And, you'd hang around in your car, and in the small towns, that's what you did. You were just waiting for something to happen. You found places to gather. You were kind of caught between being a child and wanting to be an adult, but you weren't quite there. And this film really understands that grey area perfectly, I think. Other places where it really gets it is just in the bedroom setting for Chris and Sean Penn's characters. The details are spot on. The posters, just the way the shared rooms mapped out. I saw the AC/DC poster, and it's for Power Age, I think, which is one of my favourite albums, and that's just right, because this film's set in 1978. That's when that fantastic album came out. It just reminded me of bedrooms from that era where I can remember having rugby league players or cricketers. I was still pretty young back then. That changed later on to pin-ups and rock stars and rock albums and all sorts of things from the culture on my walls. But that was just something that we did back then. And I knew quite a lot of brothers, and their shared rooms looked exactly like Brad Jr. and Tommy's. So those little details make the film feel lived in. All right, the father figure myth. That's what's really driving this film. And I feel like the film really understands something powerful about young men at this critical age, 17, 18, 19, and earlier in the case of Tommy. When a father is absent, or a father figure, he becomes a legend, or he can. Brad Jr. doesn't really know Brad Sr. You get the sense he hasn't been around much, if at all. He knows the idea of Brad Sr., what he represents, the stories, the reputation, the mythology, the legend. And because Brad Sr. is dangerous, that only makes him more fascinating, and Brad Sr. certainly understands this, and he knows exactly what his son wants. He ends up selling him a dream. He manipulates his own son to further his criminal venture. And it involves selling the easy life, the myth of the easy life. That's the fantasy that Brad Sr. creates. And pretty much for the first half of the film, that's what's being offered to Brad Jr. as an escape. A life filled with cool cars. He's always flipping cars and showing up with new cars. There's a great scene where he buys a used car with cash, $5,000 cash, and then sells it across the road to the other used car dealer for $4,600. And Sean Penn says, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm doing my laundering the cash that's come from the criminal enterprises." So there's easy money, there's dangerous and interesting friends, there's excitement. And when you're in rural Pennsylvania or rural anywhere, that's a heady brew. It can be intoxicating. So why wait years for success when someone, especially blood, your dad, is offering it immediately, and he's doing it and seems to be working? It's a shortcut. Ultimately, the film shows us that, of course, shortcuts come with consequences. Otherwise, we'd all be doing it. It's interesting that Brad Jr., when he's getting involved in the crime, we can see that he's definitely not a bad person. He's actually, I think, a good person. You can tell that he's got a strong relationship with his grandmother, and that says a lot. He respects her. He looks after her. He looks after his mother. He understands right from wrong. He tries to protect people, including his little brother. He's not looking for a life of crime. He's looking for belonging. And when you understand the kind of life he's had, that all makes sense. And his relationship with Terry, I think, shows the real Brad Jr. And when he's with her, he's kind of different. His guard comes down. He's more relaxed. He's positive. He's hopeful. Ultimately, he's happy. And she represents another future. And the tragedy is that Brad Sr. offers excitement, but Terry offers meaning. And Brad Sr. sees the threat that Terry represents to his hold over his son, and he does something about it. Sean Penn. I thought about Sean Penn and what he means to me, and for a long period of his career, he looked to me like he'd already lived a life. And his early career is fascinating. I had a look through it. Taps with Tom Cruise and Tim Hutton. Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Bad Boys, Falcon and the Snowman, this film, even Colors and Casualties of War. They're all young men from difficult backgrounds, right? And in this one, he's got a weathered look already. He's got that stare, that 1,000-yard stare that guys in prison have got. He looks tired. He looks weary to me, and he looks like life's already tested him. Even though he's playing an 18, 19-year-old, he definitely has the look of someone who's grown up too quickly and been forced to. And hasn't been educated in the traditional sense, but he understands people. And the liquor store scene right at the start showed this to me, because there's a guy in probably his 40s, late 30s, early 40s. Chris Penn and his mate have tried to get him to buy alcohol for them. Gave him $5. He said he'd do it. And then they gave him a bit of lip, and he doesn't do it, and he keeps the cash. So they ask Brad Jr. to get their money back. I was expecting him to try and take a swing at the guy. But instead of reacting with anger, he really controls the situation. He's got that confidence. He knows how to survive. What he does, he jumps on the bonnet of the guy's car and says, "Come on, let's go." And the older bloke goes, "Yep, sure, let's do this." And then Sean Penn rips off the windscreen wiper, puts it between his teeth like he's, like it's War of the Roses or something, and wears the guy down to the point where he hands over the bottle of gin as well, just to get this guy out of his life. Really smart. Later on too, when he enters Brad Sr.'s world and surrounded by hardened criminals, he understands how to handle himself. He knows not to say too much. He knows to just read the room. He's street smart. And book smart people don't always get that. Street smart people do. They have to. The best part of Sean Penn's performance for me is watching the transformation. At the beginning, he's eager. He is a little bit naive, even though he is street smart. Brad Sr.'s in a different league. So he wants his father's approval. Later in the film, though, he understands that becoming his father would destroy him and what he really wants out of life. And he just wants he tells Chris Penn, he says, "I just want to be a mechanic earning $10 to $12 an hour. And I want to be with Terry and I want to leave." The person that he had admired becomes the person that he realizes he needs to escape from. And that guy is played by Christopher Walken, the most dangerous kind of father. Wow. How can I say? Christopher Walken just completely owns this character of Brad Sr. He's charming, funny, he's confident, unpredictable, above all, dangerous. I can understand why people are attracted to him. He's got that charismatic aura, but he's a master manipulator. And the fascinating thing about him is that he isn't necessarily the toughest person physically. He doesn't have to be, though, because his strength is understanding people, and he knows what they want and what they fear, and he knows how far to push them, and he knows what they need to hear. He knows when to make them feel important, and he knows when to scare them. He uses them. I mean, this isn't anything new, but Walken is unique, right? He is just... I'd already seen him. I reckon the first thing I saw him in was The Deer Hunter, and The Dead Zone, pretty much at the same time. And what an introduction to the world of Walken. You know, The Deer Hunter, that character. I mean, I'm not even sure. It might have even been in The Simpsons. The Russian roulette aspect of it. I think I've seen it somewhere. It's become a part of the culture. It's what people think of when they think of The Deer Hunter, the Russian roulette and the tragic scene at the end. But then, you know, I think of him in The Dead Zone, where he's a normal kind of guy, and then he has the accident, and then he's got those powers. Or as a criminal kingpin in The King of New York, or countless other films. He's one of these guys like Donald Sutherland that always seems to be working. He's been vampires. He's been weirdos. He was in that Fat Boy Slim video, dancing around. Like, nothing surprises me with this guy. And in life too, there's plenty of Walken stories out there. There's plenty of imitators. You know, he's got this incredible way of speaking where he puts full stops into the way that he sounds. He ends a sentence halfway through and then starts it again. And it's just brilliant. It's just the way he speaks. It's unique. The eyes as well. He's got these incredible eyes. The voice is different too. The hair. He's got this hair that seems unending, like it goes in every direction at once. It goes up and to the side, and he's this. Well, I don't know if he's reasonably tall or whether Sean Penn's not, but he towers over Sean Penn in this, and he is kind of intimidating in an oddball kind of way. And the way he walks around, the way he smiles at people, and he cocks his head, and he's got this grin that can be just as terrifying as when he has a deadpan look and stares right through people, and that's terrifying too. Look, all up, he's unpredictable, and I find it captivating to watch people who are unpredictable, and that's Walken. I'll always watch a film that he's in, and I've sat through some bad films, and there's quite a few of them that he's been in, but he's never bad. Even when the role's bad, he's so watchable. Chris Penn as Tommy brings another angle to this story, and he's obviously another young person searching for acceptance. He doesn't know who his father is, and you get an early glimpse into the sadistic nature of Chris Walken's character, because he refers to Chris Penn as a bastard. And then says he was joking, but you know, in every joke there's a hint of truth, and it's a pretty savage thing to say to a 16-year-old or 17-year-old. It's so clear that Chris Penn's character wants belonging and respect and attention even more than Brad Jr. And Brad Sr. gives him that, or he gives him a hint of it, not so much directly as what he gives to his own son. But he realizes that it's a bit of a package deal, and that if he wants to get Brad Jr. into the crew, that he probably has to dangle the same kind of future in front of Tommy. But you get the sense that it's never really in Tommy's future, and that Tommy just becomes a part of the big game that Brad Senior's playing. Chris Penn's an interesting guy because when I look back, like, he was in Footloose, he was in this film, and he's in fantastic shape at this point in his career. He looks great. Looks like the sky's the limit. He's actually a decent actor. And then fast forward 5 years or so, and 5 or 6 years, and you see him in films like Reservoir Dogs and True Romance. And he's great in both of those films, by the way, especially Reservoir Dogs. But it's sad to see what happened to him physically. You could already see him. He piles on a lot of weight in a short period of time. And sadly passed away when he was about 40, I think. I think he had heart issues. Maybe he wasn't living the best lifestyle, or wasn't aware of his condition. But anyway, he tragically passed away young. I always thought he had a very earthy screen presence and a real presence. And in this film, he really feels young and energetic and physically capable. Yeah, I was quite sad when I heard about his death, because I thought, even though by then his career had sort of leveled out a bit, for a while there he was really becoming something. He was in the shadow of a very famous older brother. This film really works for me, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but I think at heart it's because it doesn't just show bad people doing bad things, really black and white, distinction there. It understands temptation, and it understands why people are drawn towards making bad choices. It's understandable. I could see that most of these characters are searching for something. Even Brad Jr. and Tommy's mum, for example, she's looking for love. She's looking for respect. They're looking for excitement and belonging. They're also looking for love and respect, but they've got to find those things wherever they can. And there's limited options in this tiny little town. The tragedy, of course, is that they go looking for it, and they go looking for it in the wrong place and don't find it. They think they do, but they don't. I loved this film when I first saw it, and I've only enjoyed it probably more and more on each rewatch. And like I said, I've seen it 9 or 10 times, I think. I feel like I've watched it every few years, and it did grab me straight away, because I thought it contained everything. It was cinematic enough to be entertaining, but it's got a great message, and it's believable, and some fantastic performances as well. And I've said it before on other pods, but I don't always react as strongly to a complex, clever film as I do to films that grab my emotional side and hit me in the gut. Probably an interesting comparison is with River's Edge, which I saw very recently. Came out the same year. Both films have got Crispin Glover, actually. I forgot to mention, Crispin Glover is in this film. And he's in this film about as much as I think he needs to be in any film. He did remind me of guys at that age that I've known too, because he's got this hairstyle where the fringe hangs over his eyes and he hides behind it. It's like a defense mechanism. And even though his character's peripheral in this film, he's actually quite important to the plot. Whereas in River's Edge, he was leading it, and I just don't think he got on my nerves in that film. And anyway, that's another story. But the comparison with River's Edge is initially more disturbing. And I'll never forget that film because of the impact it had on me when I saw it, because I was the age of the characters when I saw it. And it was so chilling, the nihilism in that film. But it was quite quite stark and somber, and I couldn't really relate to it, but it was shocking. This one is more cinematic, but the characters have got a little bit more depth, and the acting is a fair bit better from the key performers, especially Sean Penn and Walken. So this film has darkness, but it's got momentum, and the tragedy is definitely there, but it's still entertaining. It's very rewatchable, is what I'm trying to say. I've proven that, and I'll definitely watch it again and again. It just looks great. I love watching Sean Penn at this age. He's got a face that is really interesting to look at. I do think this is a date film because there's a genuine love story in there with Terry and Brad Jr. And like I said, the film's entertaining, and I do think it leaves you feeling something, not just a downer, not just that's realistic, but it gets the juices flowing, and that's what you want. Hangover film, I think so. Again, it's entertaining. It's got some tension and action and great performances, but it moves along and it looks great, and it's not overwhelming. So I think it works with that as well. But it's a watch alone film. I've proven that. There's plenty to think about afterwards, if that's your thing. But it's just a great film to experience. So ultimately, I think this is a story about becoming your own person. What I appreciate is that Brad Jr. Realizes the kind of person he is at a young age. I didn't realize who I was at that age. I've only realized that in recent years. So I can really take my hat off to this character. But I do think that this film is saying, like I said, what if the person you admire most is the person you need to escape? And I don't know what that feels like. And that's why I like dipping my toe into these situations in film, because it's a way that you get to experience dangerous things in life without really experiencing them. And that's the beauty of cinema. Brad Jr.'s tragedy is not that he wants to become a criminal. It's not the criminal part that he wants. He doesn't think that that's a great thing to be. He wants a father. He wants his father's love and respect, and he wants the easy ride, of course, until he wakes up a bit. And the father finds that the father that he does find, sadly, is the person who takes away the future that he was beginning to imagine. So it's a pretty wild ride, but it's a ride worth taking. So yeah. I can only give this film the best rating that I can, and check it out, watch it. It's on Prime Amazon quite regularly. That's where I saw it. All right, that's At Close Range from 1986. That's my thoughts about it. Thanks as always for listening, and see you next time.